I would say that you're not used to that kind of weather. I know the UK's
Oh
kind of
yeah,
cooler and cloudy, but this year has been, from what I read, this has been a kind of a scorcher in the UK.
yeah. Well, the thing is, in England, let me do some conversions because we use a different measurement. But when it's around, let's see, when it's around 68 to 70 Fahrenheit, people are already going to beaches, taking their tops off down the street, that kind of thing, like properly suffering from the heat. And then recently we've been having like 95 Fahrenheit. And in America that's not too crazy. That's warm, but it's just like it's like every other weekend, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there it's like brutal because nobody has AC and it's really humid and it's awful. It's really bad to be in. But here it's not as humid and everyone has AC. You know, you go into a store, it has AC, the car has AC, everywhere has AC, so it's not as bad. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, we
England's starting
really.
to cool down now, which is good.
I had my first time living in Europe. I lived in a few countries, but my first apartment had no AC, and then I found out they controlled the temperature for the entire building. It was an apartment. The entire building was controlled like centrally, which was just weird to me. And
That does sound quite odd. Yeah.
You
I think
will be cold now.
it was
Got
tough. It
no
was,
choice in the matter.
yeah. I mean, I'm spoiled here. In the U.S. you do have AC everywhere. So
Yeah, it's nice.
let's see. All right, we're about ready to get started. I got my recording up. First, let me do the introduction. This is episode 24. Thank you to everyone that's tuning in. I mean, it's been a heck of a ride since the start of the year when we started this. Purely volunteer and always looking for more help, but it's been a lot of up and downs in the market, and I'm always grateful for the opportunity in the forum just to talk with you guys and to engage a community and be a part of RCC. But yeah, so today will be joining me will be Big Man Oz, Mister, and then myself, Mr. Poppy. So gents, thank you for coming. The first thing I wanted to lead off with is, and I talked a little bit about this with some folks this week, is I see a lot of division. It almost feels like the division between the Ethereum camp and the Bitcoin camp is getting more divisive. I guess Vitalik made a comment about Michael Saylor. For those who don't know, Vitalik is the spiritual leader of Ethereum and one of its main devs. Michael Saylor is the gentleman who's worked very hard for the past few years to convince, Fortune 500 businesses to invest in Bitcoin. And he just made a comment or something along the lines of like kind of indirectly calling Michael Saylor a clown, I think. I don't think he
It
called
was
him
pretty
out by
direct,
name.
actually.
Was it? Was it? I didn't actually follow the thread. I just saw comments afterwards on it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't think he called him out by name, but I thought it was pretty clear. But clown emoji was an interesting one. Why did he say that about Sailor?
I think maybe he just kind of hit a tipping point. It was probably around the day that Saylor made some comments about Bitcoin. He does a lot of inspirational comments. But here's kind of my grind. I don't think a lot of people realize that Vitalik started off in Bitcoin, and despite being very young, he didn't just start off in Bitcoin. Did you know that Bitcoin Magazine was co-founded by Vitalik? Like,
Yeah, I think I read in somewhere that he found his love for Bitcoin actually because he used it to purchase a t-shirt. And then because he found like how easy it was to use, he started running a number of like newsletters and magazines, a number of stuff so he could accumulate more Bitcoin.
yeah. Oh, in I mean, this is the other thing too, because he's getting a lot of shade, and I think part of it might be because the Ethereum Foundation is at 3 times now that they've perfectly sold the top for Ethereum. I think it's 3. But he didn't just co-found the magazine. He wrote hundreds of articles about Bitcoin. Provided a lot of game theory, helped to develop and kind of guide the direction of Bitcoin. It was only when he wanted to do the smart contract that he went a different direction. When invested heavily, obviously, in Ethereum for the past 6 years. But, it's one of those things I think that a lot of newer investors, especially the Bitcoin side of the house, needs to be reminded of. The guys, you may not like him personally, but you can't question his contributions to the space, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of, again, not to use like the phrasing the cause, but you kind of have to here. It's like it's against the cause to have this kind of infighting. We're all trying to push towards the same future, the mass adoption kind of things. So it doesn't really make much sense to just like have this negative aura surrounding it, because Vitalik definitely has love for Bitcoin. That's where he first started, and everybody kind of remembers their first coin. It's not something you forget, right? So this infighting is kind of pointless. It's just a waste of time, and it just hinders future progress that we could make, because there's no reason why the two sides can't get along, because they have the exact same goal in mind, really.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think all the personalities in the space are a little bit divisive. We're not going to even get into Cardano and Charles. I'm going to say his name, or Charles Hoskinson. But he's another very polarizing person that's fun to follow. These are all interesting and intelligent and sometimes divisive people that I do recommend following on social media, though, because the market does kind of trend with them at times. So
and they're pretty good entertainment.
they are, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin. I'm doing a new formula for you guys this week. I'm keeping you on your toes. I want to see how organic it is when we just kind of don't have an agenda. I know you guys are so used to that, but after last week, I realized the guys kept going off of topic and in good ways. And so maybe this week we're going to try it a little bit different. So yeah, Bitcoin's currently flirting with the very top of the 200-week SMA, which a lot of folks are watching. I think that's currently around like 22.8, 22.9. What are your thoughts, gents? You think we're going to stay over it for this week, or you think we're going to be heading down?
Well, I haven't been watching Bitcoin too much the last few days. I've been kind of keeping my head down in the alts, just because they picked up a lot of growth recently. A number of coins. I mean, even Luna did 40% recently, so I've been focusing on them. But I don't know, something about this just feels a bit too forced. Again, it's kind of like the growth that's too fast. Obviously, everybody wants moonshots and Bitcoin to moon overnight, but it's just not healthy. It leaves a lot of gaps. So I'm starting to lose confidence in the structure here, just because of how fast it came up, and it did leave a number of gaps below. However, a lot of the lower levels I'm actually fairly confident in. It's just the 20K kind of range there I'm not so confident in. I feel it needs to be kind of a longer accumulation period there. But the lower regions, I think we did a good enough job at flushing out the leverage, especially around 17K. You have Elon selling, you have miners selling, pretty much everyone was selling down there, and it pretty much just got absorbed then.
Yeah, I personally closed my long and positioning for reentry a little bit lower, looking for support around 2019, somewhere around there, but not so sure. So yeah, I'm pretty much where Ollie's at.
Yeah. Some of these alts have been incredible. You know what? I'm kicking. I can't be the only one that's kicking myself for not buying Matic or Polygon. At that peak bearish moment. That's up over 200% in the past month. It went from like 30 cents or a little bit over to what it tapped like over. It's over. That's a little bit under now. But it tapped $1.01.
That's crazy. That's I definitely didn't pay much attention to layer twos this time around. I lost a lot of confidence after kind of the FDM scandal and all that kind of stuff. I kind of just can't be bothered to watch them. But definitely a missed opportunity there, because a lot of them, especially the last week, they've just been going round after round, having these huge 10-20% pumps.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? I do agree, though. I feel like it did happen a little bit too fast. But maybe that says something about a new kind of market structure that we're just not accustomed to. I mean, this is the first time crypto's been in recessionary period, even if governments aren't fully acknowledging that recession. A lot of technical qualities of a recession are in place, and that high inflation. It's interesting, truthfully, all things considered, I think crypto is doing a heck of a job here. I could have seen a year ago, if someone had told you everything going on, that you would think Bitcoin would be under 10K right now, if you're trying to predict the future.
Like the amount of news we've had is just crazy. A lot of people are obviously like bothered about where we are right now. It's definitely a lot lower than the all-time high, but you have to remember that's the all-time high. That's the highest it's been. Obviously, it's going to return to its kind of like its average range, its average true range. And then also just on top, this is, I know we say it every week, but it's uncharted territory. A lot of these events have just never happened at the same time, or at least haven't happened in tens of years since Bitcoin's existed. So, I think it's actually doing pretty well, like you said.
Yeah. And the other thing I saw, this is my favorite comment. I saw someone talking about, actually, maybe I mentioned this last week. Someone was like, are you in a spot where you're trying to decide how much to FOMO? And that resonated with me, man, because I'm not going to lie. I didn't deploy all of my stables. In fact, I still have quite a big sum of stables. Now they're earning yield in DeFi, which is one of my favorite things to do. And I managed to dodge all the big bombs like Luna over the past year. But, I bet there's a lot of people listening to this that are thinking the same thing. Like, man, I want to buy in. I'm not sure. Think of it this way. If at this point in the bear market, if this, let's say 17K was the bottom a month ago, and then you look at historical trends and how long it takes until you start to really reverse that trend into a meaningful bull market where things are really going crazy, you got plenty of time. Like, this is so early. I mean, you just keep DCAing, or, I'm not advice, right? But I mean, if you really believe in the cycle pattern and you really believe that this is going to continue to trend up over time and that the bottom is in, I mean, you're super early. Like, there's no need to feel FOMO here. Like, I don't think FOMO is the right word. I think just smart investing. Everyone listening to this is early for the next cycle, period. I can guarantee you we're not going to be hitting 100K anytime soon. It's going to take... I mean, even under the best of conditions, everything, the stars align, it would still take months for that kind of movement to happen, right? But we know that's not going to happen. The macro climate's so oppressive that we're probably we'll see some bullishness, I think. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Like, is it fair to say that you're still super early for the next cycle? I think is the bottom line, is what I'm trying to get at.
Well, the government's trying very hard to claim we're not in a recession, but under most technical factors, we're in a recession. If that was the low, that's a very good low, right? There could have been worse lows. So I definitely think there's some merit in saying just wait, take it slow. You have plenty of time. It's not going to go to 100K overnight because there's still conflicts going on. There's still food shortages in Europe. There's still inflation. And supposedly now, there's also a recession. So you have time. You don't have to rush into anything. I even felt a bit rushed doing my spot orders, setting limit orders, because, you just don't know what's going to happen. So I think in circumstances like this, the best game plan is literally just take it slowly and just see what happens. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket, obviously. And, DCA, like we say most often, it's a strategy that works.
And my other favorite thing is buying NFTs now, and for the past month.
Oh yeah,
like it's such a discount, and there's a lot of great projects out there that will probably continue to be great projects into the next cycle. I mean, you gotta be smart about it. But for example, if you wanted to get into the Yuga ecosystem, you wanted to get a Bored Ape or a Mutant Ape or whatever it is. Boy, is it a discount now, and I'm willing to bet by the next bull run, those things are going to be very spicy.
Yeah, I mean, Yuga Labs is still developing a ton of stuff too. So any labs or kind of team that's still developing, it's not like the ecosystem is dead. It's not dying. It's far from that. They're still doing stuff with Other Side, and you have other great projects still being released. You have stuff like I mean, Ether Jump's one that me and you enjoy. I know we played that a little bit recently, and there's a ton of like projects like that are doing a lot of good stuff, and they're still going to be coming
Yeah.
out throughout the bear market.
Hey,
You
did
know,
you
you may as well just, throw a penny here and there and see what happens.
put your ether jump into the chat, into the Reddit? So the ether jump stuff's fun. It
Oh, it's so good.
when you go through someone's level, like you could do Oz's level and it'll record the high scores. You know what I wanted to do was give like some prize to whoever gets the top score on those. I didn't get to update mine yet. But
Oh, I had like something like 120 different people with scores on mine. It was
wow.
crazy.
Yeah. So speaking of NFTs, here's a reason to, some people are saying, well, the volume's really down, and that's true. The volume is really down, but there's still pretty sufficient liquidity within the NFTs. But here's something to be excited about, I think. Did you guys know that CryptoPunks are getting a Tiffany's what's the word, pendant? 250 custom pendants for CryptoPunk NFT profile pictures.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
yeah,
Is that the one that's at 30 ETH?
Yeah, it's 30 ETH to get it. You know what? I guarantee you that thing's going to sell out in like 10 minutes.
That's two major brands coming together. That's
That's
huge.
a big deal. And I'm not going to lie, I think they look good, man. Like I always like the CryptoPunk vibe. I mean, I'm kind of a boomer, so like for me, pixel art isn't like some aesthetic or some retro throwback. Like I really did grow up with like Atari and original Nintendo. I mean, I remember that was the standard at one point. The art just looks good to me though, and like the pendant. I don't know if you guys. I'll put a picture in the chat. These are individual gemstones on each pixel of the punk, so pretty cool. Honestly, and I kind of wondered how they were gonna, Yuga Labs picked up, they picked up the punks as part of their intellectual property this past year. So I wondered how they were gonna approach it. And I guess forming partnerships with high-end fashion brands is probably a good play.
Damn, that does look cool.
Right?
I'd buy that if I had the money. I like that.
Well, it's like 50,000 or whatever 30 ETH is right now, sir.
Yeah, chump change.
Oh yeah. I think
it's a great idea. I think this is the kind of stuff we need to really bring mainstream adoption, right? Not that it hasn't been happening, but to really show the value of an NFT beyond just being on your screen, right? It's it's very
You can hold it, it's
authenticity
yours.
of this real world good. Yeah, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, to add on to what Pappy was saying, sorry, it's a bit of a tangent, but while the volume of NFTs have gone down, the average price of an NFT has gone from $300 to $1,500 in just a year. So while the volume may be a lot lower, the average price and the amount of money in the space has been like 5 times higher. That's huge.
That's a good point. There was a period too where it felt like I'm saying this anecdotally, but I think it's true. The mint price for NFTs was trending up, and I remember there was that period somewhere between Pixelmon and other side or other deed, or where the price was starting to get kind of high, or even Moonbirds too, and people were getting a little bit uncomfortable. And that's also when ETH was valued higher as well, and it did kind of price people out. And we had that big pivot though, not so long ago when Goblin Town came out and they did the free mint meta. And now we were getting flooded, with tons and tons of those. But I could see that trend kind of continuing. What I'll be interested to see is how that kind of number is measured now that we've had a proper bear market. People's value in their ETH collection, or I'm sorry, in their NFT collection, may be up in terms of ETH, but down in terms of dollars.
Good point. Yeah.
I mean, me personally, I'm happy stacking ETH. If there's going to be two things that I'm okay stacking, Bitcoin and ETH, and there's certainly others, but I mean, measuring in terms of token or coin value versus dollar value right now.
Yeah, I mean, also stacking ETH isn't like it's not. It makes sense, right? Because you can spend it on stuff. You can buy NFTs, and it has utility. With ETH, you can publish contracts. You can interact with a number of different stuff. You can buy your own NFTs. You can run metaverse sites. You can do so many things. So, the dollar value isn't really like important to me now, just because, if I have X amount of ETH, I can do X amount of things, right?
That's a great way of looking at it, right? Stacking Gwei, maybe stacking sats.
Yeah,
Pay to
kind
play.
of just collecting as much utility as possible.
Hmm. Yeah. So let's move on. Let's talk about where was it? I'm on the wrong one. Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to. So for the first topic, Vitalik and the ETH Foundation. Although we did speak fairly, fondly of him earlier, I gotta say, how does the foundation manage to sell like the peak top on ETH so many times? I need to know their secret, man.
Is that a rhetorical question, or?
I mean, you could say in theory they make the top, but then that would imply that the market's following Ethereum, which I don't think was the case in either of those, right? I think it was following macro and following Bitcoin, but they've been pretty consistent about it.
I
Yeah,
mean, it's completely. This is a bit outside my wheelhouse, but I mean, I wonder if the size of their dumps are enough to make any sizable moves that might reverse any momentum, right? Because I mean, it's not about selling at the top, I would imagine, more than selling into, some green candles for them. So that momentum might get disrupted, perhaps, if they dump enough, right? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, maybe they are causing the top, not so much from uh, you know, being able to change market structure, but maybe just enough to change sentiment, right?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, so I mean, an example was in November. So on November 16th, ETH was flirting with 5K, $5,000. It was 4,891. The next day, Ethereum Foundation sold 20,000 ETH on Kraken. And by the way, they only paid $20 in gas to pull this off. So they really killed it on that trade, right? And now think about, how many people, held all the way down. It's incredible. I'm just going to start to follow their wallets. Anytime I see big numbers move out, that's it. I'm selling. That's just my new strategy.
Yeah, let's just copy trade the ETH Foundation.
Copy
Actually,
trade. Yeah.
one thing that's interesting about the ETH Foundation is that, like, Vitalik, while people may presume that he's like immediately in control, he's not entirely. He has to ask people, and I think actually I saw somewhere that he was pretty much begging them to sell. So it could have just been a hunch he had, because he has actually talked pretty bearishly about the markets for the past months. He was also kind of back in I think it was November. He was also quite bearish then. So, I think his voice has more of an impact on the market than anyone else. Because, if we say we're feeling bearish, nobody's going to bat an eye, right? But if it's Vitalik, you're probably going to sell, and he's pretty vocal on Twitter. So it's not too bad of a jump to presume that he just begged them to sell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's true. He doesn't, it's not like he flips a switch and just individually does the sell. That would be pretty wild, though.
Yeah, he's a good trader.
So here's a question: how come? And I've seen a lot of interesting perspective on this. How come after the last FOMC? How come after the 75 basis point hike? And how come after we're unofficially confirming recession type news, is the crypto market going up? So I'm really putting you on the spot on this one, and there's no right or wrong answer, but I'm curious to hear what you guys think.
Getting ready for the decoupling. Let's go.
Well, it'd be beautiful.
I mean, all jokes aside, though, I think, for me personally, there is a chance, just kind of going back to your original question of like, where are we going in terms of price action? I think there is a chance that we are still overall fully in the bear cycle. And what we're seeing now is a bit of irrational exuberance, perhaps, just,
Like a little
dead
relief.
cat bouncy areas. Yep.
Yeah, dead cat bounce. Everyone, all the bulls, biggest fear right there.
Yes, sir.
So,
And yeah, I think Oz kind of spoke to it a bit in terms of we moved up too fast, right? It doesn't make sense. The volume doesn't support it, and yet there is, extreme, not extreme, but fairly bullish price action recently. I think there's a chance that we could be in dead cat bounce territory.
yeah.
So just to add on to that, I think a lot of people, you may hear people throwing around the term like priced in. Maybe it could come down to the fact that, people had been expecting this news for just so long that by the time it came, it was kind of just making them happy to hear what they thought. Once the government have kind of said, okay, yeah, you guys are right, you guys did it, you predicted this for months. I think at that point they're ready to say, okay, well, now we have confidence, maybe they're actually going to do something, because most financial advisors, most of the market has been viewing the 75 BPS as happening months before they actually announced it. So it's probably just comes down to that. Once they feel the government is actually ready to do something, they're ready to invest again. They just need to be told that it's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, market.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that.
Yeah,
sorry, I thought we were talking about Bitcoin, not traditional markets. But
well,
it happens to both, really, though.
Yeah, you can say both.
But I think there's also in terms of traditional markets, Oz makes a really good point of it being priced in, and I think another key statement from the Fed was, well, from Jerome Powell, that was interesting, was they're getting rid of forward guidance, right? So they're not forecasting performance ahead of time. They're going to be looking at numbers in retro to understand, right, and to inform their rate decisions going forward. And maybe it's a reaction to that, right? Because once the Fed removes their own forecasts and their own guidance, then it's up to the market to figure out where the smart money is going, right? And if you look at the bond market, I think there's some interesting stuff happening there. But without getting too much into the weeds, I think personally that it might be the markets were happy that they confirmed a 75 bit hike, and the market itself is searching for that right pricing in for what is expected based off the bond market for the economy to look like, right? In that, like, not immediate, but in the near term future, right?
Yeah, I think you could even just boil a lot of this down to what we're all doing here, which is trying to predict the future. And so people are going to start looking ahead past what the headlines are today and try to anticipate what the headlines will be in a few months. And maybe we're at just kind of at that kind of right inflection point where, given everything we know, we might see kind of some sort of pivot in the next quarter. I do think that without an FOMC next month, this month in August, right? Yeah, it is August. And the election cycle in the U.S. I mean, that's a great opportunity to, for the Fed to just give some relief to the market. And if they do plan to slam down and raise rates aggressively again, wait about 6 weeks and then give it another shot. You can't, because I think there's a lot of stability risk, to economies when you just try to keep that constant pressure on. In this case, raising rates endlessly is not necessarily the right way to do it. I'm not an economist, but I'm sure that there's a good reason to occasionally let off the gas. numbers.
Yeah, and I guess we'll see where we land. And it takes us back to inflation too, right? And the lack of go forward guidance from the Fed. It's the numbers just are just not really adding up, right? In terms of recession, because when you look at some metrics, you're like, okay, technical recession, like undeniable. Then you look at other numbers, and it's like, okay, well, the amount of money that consumers have spent is actually on the rise. Like, how do you explain that? And this is not financial advice. This is just me talking now, right? But I mean, if we're in the middle of a recession, an inflationary environment that's kind of unprecedented in for decades now, then the cost of goods is going up. Of course, people are going to be spending more because it costs that much more to buy X amount of goods, right? So I think that it'll be really interesting to see if the market picks up on that, right? Because the Fed is saying we're not technically in a recession because look at these numbers. Well, there are a lot of ways to look at these different numbers that are contradicting each other, and the market might be in search of that real truth on where inflation is heading, where the Fed's likely to take rates. So I think it'll be really interesting, but I'm hoping that all helps kick off a rotation into Bitcoin and crypto at large, Ethereum and some altcoins to really kick off that decoupling. That I keep harping on. That would be great.
So, have you guys been tracking some of the rumor mill around Ethereum Classic?
A few months ago, but not in recent times, no.
So with the upcoming merge for Ethereum, there's a lot of chatter that miners are going to pivot over to ETC, and given its recent price appreciation, that it may be a potential, reasonable target for these miners. I mean, obviously it's Ethereum in a form, and they could continue to mine that profitably, but there's always that question of, will any actual business come over to ETC, or are they going to be mining a bit of a ghost chain? Because there's really not much going on ETC at the moment. And then I see even more, crazier ideas, which I don't think will come to play, that, maybe there'll be a large migration off of Ethereum into ETC. I just don't think, I think the average protocol, the average service app is going to remain on core Ethereum, wherever the ETH Foundation and Vitalik go, I guess. Although I should say Vitalik did speak positively about ETC recently. I think something along the lines of saying it's a decent proof of work alternative to ETH. But Mr., I'm curious what you think. I mean, do you see any reasonable value in someone trying to make a jump to ETC? I mean, maybe cheaper gas is all I could think of.
I mean, it's sure for a while, right? But I think ETH has made so many moves to try to mitigate that, right? Especially with the merge and going to proof of stake, that it probably, if there is a savings in gas, it won't be long lived. But as far as protocols rotating over and starting to build DeFi on ETC, I just, maybe as another chain to launch on, I just don't see a full-on migration. But it does make sense, from a miner's perspective. They have all this sunk cost on their hardware, right? It does make sense. If it is even cheaper to mine, then why not continue to use that hardware in the way it was intended to be used, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from that standpoint, I think it kind of does make sense that they would switch to starting to mine ETC. But to your point, you have to keep that utility going in order for anybody to, for that demand for the token to be out there. So that's the big question.
That's the challenge. So basically what would happen is if not enough buyers show up to purchase ETC, if not enough users show up, there's not going to be enough demand to counter the miners, profit taking, which would just sink ETC's price. So I guess the game theory is that even if a small percentage of ETH's TVL were to expand or move over there, that would be enough to sustain it. I'm not sure the hard number is. I can tell you, looking at DeFi Llama right now, Ethereum Classic is, in terms of ranking and size, in the size based on total value locked, like the total amount of cash locked and invested into that chain. Ethereum Classic is ranked 109. That means there's 108 other chains that have more invested on it. So it's a long road to get up there to number one. Number one with ETH right now today says $68.5 billion. And of course, Binance Smart Chain's number two. It's pretty much eternally number two at this point. So that'll be interesting, though, from a speculative perspective. Like as a trader, there may be some opportunities there, and who knows? Maybe ETC pulls it off. I don't.
Maybe from a trade perspective, I think, if anything, right now would be the time to position yourself for a long. But if it was me, I would wait to see kind of where the adoption is going. Is there any sort of migration? Is there utility being built onto ETC? And if the miners do end up starting to mine ETC, but we don't see the utility being built, man, I would short it.
Mm-hmm.
I would find a way to short it.
Yeah, based on DeFi Llama, there's only 3 D apps. There's only three services on the chain right now. One of them looks like it's dead. ETC swap and Hebe swap. No, I don't know. It may be worth exploring. It could be some very interesting opportunities with the proof of stake merge for ETH, but just putting it out there. Obviously, none of this is financial advice. It never is. We just like to talk about things. So earlier when we were talking, we said dead cat bounce, and I had to look it up. I was like, where did that term come from? I still don't really know where it came from, but the earliest citation that this particular author found is in the UK from the Financial Times in December of 1985. And some brokers called this, they it sounds like that's how they reference the market, dead cat bounce. So Oz, that's your people, man.
Does it tell you what the context was in that initial usage?
It's nothing interesting. It's just concluding that the recent falls in the market were at an end. This is what we call a dead cat bounce, one broker said flatly.
Interesting. I always pictured in my head, like I love animals, first of all, and don't, Reddit loves cats, I know, but if you were to drop a dead cat from the top of a building, it'd probably bounce when it hit the ground. Is that wrong to say? But I think that's kind of what was in my head.
Yeah,
I think that's why they call it that. Yeah.
Man.
Very morbid image.
It's English humor.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so here's an update from something we talked about a few weeks back. Aave finally did approve their new stablecoin, GHO. So if
amazing.
I think this is kind of the next iteration of stablecoins. I just think everyone that needs one may try to just make their own and collateralize their own and integrate their own because they just have more control over it.
Yeah, in some sense, it actually makes a lot more sense to have your own stablecoin because you can actually control it. You bring more trust onto your protocol. If you're having to, lend out your trust, it's like a weird way to phrase it, but if you had to lend out your trust by using other people's stablecoins, you kind of limit the control you have over the actual ecosystem. So, I don't know, I think it's kind of neat that more and more people are bringing out stablecoins because also it's competitive, right? The more options people have, the more they fight to build a better solution.
Yeah, I saw some news from the Tether community that they continue to try to shore up their collateral, clean it up, I should say. So it's really to regain that trust because I think we all know at this point that there's a lot of FUD and fear around USDT, and a lot of folks started moving into USDC as an alternative. So yeah, I think this is good news. I'm excited. I'm excited to see where that also takes Aave. I mean, Aave is, last I checked, I think the number one largest DeFi protocol in terms of the value locked into it. So it's always good to follow the market leaders and see what they're doing.
Yeah, Aave has close to 10 billion TVL now, actually. That's good.
Well, it's pretty
And
good.
I think it brings up another point of like the utility of stablecoins and how all the different ways that they're used, right? But also all the different kinds of stablecoins that are out there. And really, I think, regulations aside for a moment, that there is still going to be a healthy demand for stablecoin. I think that also means that we're going to see some innovation on stablecoins, because a project going into creating their own stablecoin, right? If they are a type of project that does need to, for example, maybe settle in a stablecoin, it does make it a lot more efficient for them, right? In terms of transactions, but certainly in terms of, like Oz mentioned, the control that they have, right, over essentially their peg and their collateral. It just makes everything so much safer, so much from a protocol's own perspective. It makes it safer for them and it makes it more efficient for them. So I expect to see more of this happening. I think it's a great thing.
Yeah. So, Oz, this is well, actually, no, it's not, sir. I forgot Brexit. I want to say this is an opportunity for some of our European friends. So one of the things that the European Banking Authority was worried about recently was its ability to actually support the upcoming crypto regulations. And these regulations, they passed a slew of these. They're going to come into effect in 2025. So we got a few years. One of their concerns was just the lack of talent. They're just not currently equipped to, and I think most governments are not equipped to contend with cryptocurrencies. It's such a fast moving market. The technology is evolving so quickly. The issues are evolving so quickly. And so it's kind of cool that they're acknowledging that that's a concern of theirs. But they were talking about, how do we get that kind of talent? Talking about, well, okay, maybe one of the things we have to do is to offer generous salaries. To me, that says, hey, you younger guys and ladies coming up in crypto now, in a few years, maybe that's your play.
Oh man, if only there was a company designed to help these governments. But actually, what's interesting is Europe is shifting a little bit closer to a more crypto-friendly atmosphere. I know you mentioned about England a second ago. Our potential future Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. I mean, obviously that has to be an election, but the public vote is fairly close there. I don't want to get into politics anyway. But anyways, he was a Chancellor of the Exchequer, and he is very bullish on crypto. And when he was working with the Mint, he was actually trying to get NFTs created. I think it was for the Jubilee. I may be wrong, but either way, he was going government funded NFTs to be created. They also released NFTs for the Olympics for the British team. So, when you have all of this positive news coming out of Europe, it's pretty exciting considering they're also the same continent that were trying to bring legislation onto privately held wallets. So it's kind of a weird shift in character, but definitely a welcomed one.
I think, I don't know if this is relevant, but just to put this out there, if they're struggling to acquire the talent that they need, right? And the only thing that they can think of is to go back to the old playbook and crank up salaries, right? I think that just shows why they're struggling to capture talent, because they're not doing anything innovative, really, right? They're not building anything, right? So the
Yeah.
kind of talent that they're looking to capture is looking to make a difference. It's looking to build and innovate, and they're just not there. So yeah, I'm sure it'll work. Money runs the world, so you folks are looking to get paid, and I'm sure they'll find the right talent. But they're certainly not going to get the cream of the crop innovators out there, in my opinion.
Actually, a really good point. Didn't think of that. Yeah, I mean, the whole point of Web3, or a lot of the developers, they definitely have the mindset they don't want to create the most impactful thing, or at least something they're passionate about. And the stuff that the government wants to create, probably isn't going to be very inspiring. You know, yeah, sure, it's great because it's a government, but then again, really, how far is the government going to go into exploring how far the technology can actually be used?
Right.
Yeah, I guess if you can't make it, if you can't cut it in crypto, maybe that's an alternative. Become a regulator.
Is that the crypto version of if you can't do, teach?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I like that. Maybe I'll apply to be a regulator. See if I get wrecked another cycle. Maybe that's the best choice. Hey, did anyone get a chance to play the Chipotle buy the dip competition? It was an online game. Probably not.
I forgot about it.
Yeah, they were giving out a bunch of like $200,000 in cryptocurrency, and then a lot of guacamole and some other stuff. But I mean, I'm a millennial, so you know the guacamole part was the one I was most excited about.
Yeah, Chipotle's pretty good. And actually, this isn't really that new for food companies. One thing I noticed recently is food companies in America love NFTs. You have like Taco Bell, I think they were one of the first to do it, but a number of other companies have also started doing it. So it's kind of cool how it can be used for a marketing tactic.
Oh, quite a few, but you've probably seen that picture. Someone posted that picture of what they called the top of the last bull market. And I forget who all was in there, but it was like Pepsi and Bud Light and I don't know, Taco Bell or someone all saying like, hey, GM, you know, we're going to make it, you know, oh boy. And they were like,
classic pop signals.
Yeah. When we saw that, we should have sold everything. Looking back, don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of doing the GM. I like keeping the positive attitude in the space. But if I see too much of it at once, I start to feel a little bit cringe, you know. There's a fine balance there.
When you see like the 40, 50-year-old media executives start spamming GM on your timeline, it does get a little bit worrying.
Yo,
it's not really what you want to see.
What's wrong with 40-year-olds doing that, man? I'm not far from 40.
It's all right. You're not an executive for the media. It's okay.
Okay, you're saying for now, Pat.
Yeah, you're all right. But
I'm
the second you step up, we're going to have some problems.
Yeah. That's what, if you didn't show up today, mister, we were going to call this the Boomer and the Zoomer.
I love it. We can still do that.
Oz and I are just going to do our own spin-off series.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I don't know if anyone saw the news about this. It seems like, I know we talk about them a lot, but they are kind of a big player in the space. Yuga Labs is being threatened with a possible class action lawsuit. And it's alleging that their NFTs and ApeCoin are securities that didn't deliver on promised returns. Think about the amount of money that's flown through that ecosystem. I mean, it's just absolutely mind-boggling how much money Bored Apes have made for the community. But imagine if someone actually did win that kind of lawsuit. I mean,
That's scary.
What the awards?
Imagine how many more would pop up.
Oh, and other projects? Yeah, I mean, no doubt.
Yeah, it's like a dangerous precedent.
It is a gray area. Yeah, if you were able to prove in that case that it was, I mean, imagine how many other projects. Yeah, they would all. I mean, that's what everyone's going to do. That was the one thing I was talking about this week with someone was they were, someone was complaining about the floor price on their particular NFT project, and I said something along the lines of, I don't think the majority, not everyone, there's good people in the space, but I think there's a large majority portion of the space that really has very low ethics, that will chase profit at any opportunity. And I also don't think that that's necessarily a reflection of them being a bad person or that they have poor ethics personally, but that it's a reflection of how few opportunities people have and how unfair the traditional fiat, system is, that a lot of us are kind of rebelling against quietly, right? By being here in crypto. Uh, if that's their only chance, if flipping some NFT for a little bit less is their only chance to, improve their quality of life, then they're going to do it. That doesn't matter how many GMs, how many we're going to make it, how many, Discord calls you're going to do. At the end of the day, people are more worried about, their personal life, their family, their kids, and I think that's a reality that a lot of people forget, especially if you're younger and you just, these are things maybe that haven't quite come to mind. That's what drives a lot of people here.
Yeah, the getting rich and retiring kind of people. It's definitely a weird thing because well, you always see like the Good Morning Wag Me stuff and like the collective phrasing. A lot of people actually got into crypto for selfish reasons, or not necessarily selfish, but more so they just want to get rich personally. So yeah, it's always a weird area where people get into the space to become rich themselves, but then the whole time they're within the space, they're kind of shilling the collective bag holding mentality.
Yeah, it's a weird dichotomy. I mean, on one hand, yeah, if too many sellers show up, well, whatever you're invested in, NFT, crypto, anything is going to start to fall in price. But on the other, I mean, obviously taking profit is a healthy thing, and a lot of people are going to do it for a lot of selfish and not selfish reasons. But you can't expect everyone to be a diamond hands forever, hodl forever. And it just doesn't make sense. I mean, at some point you got to either use it or cash it out for profit, right? One of the two. I mean, what else are you going to do?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to the wording, cryptocurrency. It's there to be used, right? If you don't use it and you're just holding it, you're just waiting to use it at some point.
Yeah, and I think there's, going back to the less, ethical personalities that might be out there, you're going to find that everywhere. You're going to find that everywhere in any kind of market or, macro socioeconomic conditions, right? And that's kind of why we do need some kinds of regulation, right? Because that is really the risk, that there are bad actors out there, right? But keep in mind, though, that's exactly where Wall Street was not too long ago, and Wall Street made it out of that okay with some regulation. So I think it kind of all just goes hand in hand, right? You need folks to you need the regulation to be loose enough to foster the innovation, but it can't be so restrictive that it kills that innovation, and you can't have regulations so loose that people get hurt. But then on the other hand, you can't have no regulation. So, it's a tough one. It's a tough one, especially because we just don't have the transparency that would be nice, and really the involvement in the policymaking process to help make sure that the right decisions are being made by the people that are in it, right? The folks that are on the ground, driving this adoption and using this cryptocurrency as it's intended. So yeah, that, all that to say, just basically, I think the regulatory environment is really going to play a big role in that.
Yeah. The regulatory everything is going to drive the next 10 years of crypto. And I don't think any of us can predict exactly how that's going to go. All you can do is, try to plan about a year out. Beyond that, I mean, we have certain assumptions about, for example, Bitcoin's adoption and trajectory, Ethereum's expansion, but there's no guarantees. I mean, regulatory changes could really either stifle that growth and innovation or really be a boon to it.
Right. And who knows what Mark Cuban knows, but he recently said that, right, Bitcoin and DeFi coins, or did he say altcoins, are in for a world of hurt, right, from a regulatory standpoint. I think, he probably knows more than most folks do.
Maybe.
I wonder what he means by that.
I mean, isn't this the same guy that got rugged like 3 different times?
It is the same guy.
Hey, I only got rugged once, Mark Cuban. So, if you need a portfolio manager, sir, just hit me up. Yeah, so one last thing, and then I think we'll move into the Q&A. And this is one I think is pretty fun. So in RCC a few days ago, gnarly_Quinn posted this article. The title is 8 months ago, I combed through all the posts here to find the subs most despised coins. I combined those into a single awful folio. And here is an update on the folio of hate. And I'll put the link in here for you guys. I think it's funny because it is a lot of the stuff that I'm aware of, as far as having some bad press around it, bad PR, bad reputation for whatever reason. But you know, so the portfolio is not. I'm going to discount the stable coins. Is BNB, Ripple, Doge, Cardano, SHIB, Internet Computer, Solana, SafeMoon, and Loopring. Now, some of those, in my opinion, and I may get some hate for this, some of these may be a little bit more deserving than others of hate. There's definitely some shady stuff, I think, that's happened with SafeMoon, for example, but that doesn't mean you can't make money on it and invest in it. But I just think that's funny. I've seen so many people do the different types of portfolios, like here's the top 10 from this period, or here's like all the best, you know, here's a list of the oracles, or, you know, those kind of things. I've never seen someone actually make a portfolio based on hated stuff. But there's a couple.
How do you determine hate is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, they didn't clarify that. But I can say, I mean, just looking over the list, you can probably assume a lot of those do get a bit of hate. I mean, we know at a certain point in history that dog-themed meme coins were getting pretty obnoxious. They were just everywhere. As much as I love me some Dogecoin. Cardano is very divisive. Internet Computer was the butt of many jokes. Solana, because it goes offline a lot. Loopring, I'm kind of surprised about. Loopring was associated with GameStop, but I don't know. Maybe there's something else about it that I'm not familiar with. But, you know, out of this whole list, I think if I was going to invest in one, BNB has done pretty darn well over time relative to almost everything.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to, just looking at its market cap, you wouldn't be able to tell that it's one of the top 8 most hated coins, most hated tokens.
If it's true. Now, I'd probably blame BSC, because we know when we were in peak bull market and gas was just a Troy. I mean, you know what, we were paying like $100, $200, you know, peak for gas at times. BSC was a lot cheaper and a lot more popular, but it also meant that they hosted a lot more, you know, scams and rugs because it was cheaper to launch there and operate there. That's probably a big part of why its reputation so poor, but you can't argue with its technical performance, which is one of the best performing coins in the past few cycles.
Absolutely.
So let's go ahead and jump into the Q&A. I think you have to get running, which is okay, sir. I will take this one and run with it. Let me see. All right. Yeah. Someone was asking about the recording, so we do try to get these up. If you're really in a rush, you just want to listen to this, or you tuned in late or something, we do put this up on the podcast site, but you can usually listen to this on Reddit. Reddit usually keeps a recording for a few weeks after we do this. Although we did notice that the last one was a little bit funny. Yeah, I did see that. That was a pretty good tweet after Elon said that he had sold 75% of Tesla's Bitcoin holdings. And then Michael Saylor said, if you sell 75% of your Bitcoin, you only have 25% yet. Deep thoughts, man. Those very deep thoughts. Dopal is sharing that Vitalik had reached out to work at Ripple. But I think early on, actually, I could be misquoting, so if I'm wrong, please, you know, burn me in the comments. But I believe that Ripple was one of those things that even Satoshi had briefly commented on. So as far as altcoins, So there was probably a period in time where, altcoins weren't so loathed and despised by a lot of the Bitcoin space. Let's see. So from Piehead, do you think you can tokenize an NFT of ownership of livestock, say turkeys, for example? I think in theory you can do, really tokens, crypto, a lot of this just goes back to being a digital ledger or a digital recording of information. NFTs are going to evolve, and definitely logging the ownership of anything is within the realm of possible. Is there any reason for someone to NFT their livestock? I doubt it, but at least not at this point. And let's see. Wow. Yeah, Dopo also with a comment about over collateralized stables. I think we talked about that last week. It's one of the examples of why we're a big fan, why we respect the DeFi space so much, because when you take a loan out on your typical standard DeFi protocol, you're going to over collateralize that loan, which really reduces the risk of the lender. And if they liquidate that position, they should be fine. Unlike what we saw with like Celsius and 3AC and these guys that are just tossing billions at each other, not even signing any documents for it, really. That was just incredible. I don't think for the rest of my life I'll ever get over that. They were able to get, I think it was 3AC, get over $1 billion loan without really signing anything. Blurbs is asking recommended platforms to trade in crypto for the UK. I'm not in the UK, so I can't comment on what the best ones are for there. We can ask Oz when he pops back up. But generally, especially in these market conditions, you will want to look for the larger players because you know that they have liquidity, you know that they have funding, you know that they're stable, they're not going to disappear and take your investment with them. We've seen at least a dozen smaller exchanges already perish to the bear market this year. And so you look at the big players like FTX, Binance, Coinbase, even Kraken. I would even put like maybe KuCoin up there. There's a lot there in the Hong Kong space that all kinds of clones of each other. But those ones are all, I think, the bigger ones. And then there's Bybit and Bitstamp and a bunch of others. You start to get down the scale. And there's been some that have been around a while. But, do your research. The number one thing is just to make sure that you can trust that they're going to be around by the next cycle. Let's see. So how long do we think crypto adoption will take? There's been some studies on this. And so I'm not going to try to quote that data myself because I don't have it in front of me and I don't want to, go and dig it up right now. But we're really most likely at the early stage of an adoption curve and at the earliest stages of mass adoption until the governments globally just kind of standardize on some policy and approach to supporting and integrating and regulating crypto. It's never going to see, in my opinion, it's never going to see true mass adoption. That's the biggest hindrance to, I think, continuing up that curve, that curve of adoption. And so once we see that, we've talked about it before, the greatest sum of wealth globally is with boomers. But most boomers they're not going to get on and use, DeFi wallets and get on Coinbase and buy stuff. They're going to get exposure through things like an ETF. And so that's why a lot of people, some aren't as bullish on ETFs, but I think long-term an ETF, a spot ETF would be very positive in the US and globally for enhancing that adoption. All right, let's see. And now we're going to go over here. And see, I'm looking on the Reddit side. I always love the scams that are like, hey, you can recover your stolen crypto Just call this number or this Telegram or this WhatsApp. If only it was that easy. Yeah, and I see Oz did under Ali6666. He posted an OpenSea link. I'll comment on it. This is his Ether jump level. So, you know what? I'll just say, whoever has the top score by next week, if you get it and you can prove it to me, we'll give some kind of award. I don't know how we'll prove it. I'll have to think about that. Post your scores next week in the comments. All right. From Bobby 2 Chains, what blockchain do you think the future metaverse is going to be built on? And do you think that multiple blockchains can successfully coexist? Here's my thought on the metaverse. I don't think the metaverse, the winning metaverse, is going to come out crypto native. I think it's going to come out of the gaming industry, is my thought. Somewhere between the gaming industry and maybe some of the big players like Microsoft, because there's also potential for metaverse as a enabler for your remote workers. But the gaming industry is really poised. I mean, something like Fortnite already is very close to what looks like is coming from Yuga Labs and the other side, is a good model, right? And the gaming companies have the resources, they have the know-how. It's just the integration of crypto into that is going to be kind of your first step. I don't think something like Decentraland is, that's not going to win over mass adoption, in my opinion. It is a really interesting experiment, though. It's a lot of fun to visit. I think at some point the future is multi-chain, interchain, ETH, ADA, SOL. I mean, those all probably will have plugs into the metaverse. And who knows, eventually, they'll probably coexist in one massive, interesting, bizarre Frankenstein of a metaverse. But early on, I mean, ETH is probably a market leader. I think Solana has been making some inroads into GameFi, so we'll see. Let's see. Yeah, so 420 Netflix and Chill is talking about ETC, and they had some attacks in the past. Short-term memories. Yeah, the space does have extremely short-term memories. That's one of the things they talk about, is getting enough miners in there to deal with the 51% attacks. And, everything else, I think, I mean, to be fair, almost every chain in the past, even in its early days, has had some kind of issue or hack or crashed. Maybe not as much as Solana, but yeah, there's potential for ETC. I don't think I'm going to be chasing it, but you never know. It's probably going to go the way of Bitcoin Cash, though, or Bitcoin Satoshi Vision, right? They do make a good earnest attempt, but it's hard to compete with that parent chain. Okay. Someone's asking, Blank.co, is Robinhood or Coinbase better? Go with Coinbase. And then get a ledger or get your own hardware wallet and move your tokens off. But now you could compare rates. I haven't actually used Robinhood in a long time, but you could look at the rates if you're really concerned, if you're going to do a lot of trading and Robinhood has what you're looking for. It's not as functional of an app, but if it really comes down to just how much you're paying per trade or something, maybe there's something to be said for Robinhood. But in general, I would personally probably pick Coinbase over that. Okay. And we'll do one more quick scan, and let's see. Any more stuff on NFTs like what you've been looking at? Probably a big game, using crypto to buy skins. Yeah, I mean, in the long term, I would hope that the gaming industry really starts to pivot and start to adopt crypto in a meaningful way. I think GameStop is perfectly positioned to help grow that adoption of NFTs within gaming, because we've said it so many times, but I would just love to see, for example, my League of Legends skins be tradable on like any NFT marketplace, right? Maybe like turn it into an ERC token, or maybe on Polygon or something, and being able to sell it to another player, and then when they load up, they have a crypto wallet in, Riot Games client, and it loads up the skins that they have tokens for. I mean, that would be wild. And I feel like it's inevitable, but it's, first we have to convince the community of gamers that there's value in it, because right now they're just afraid that it's going to just enhance the microtransaction, pardon the language, shit show that a lot of games have turned into. And I don't blame them. I've developed a deep hatred, dislike of microtransactions or developers launching incomplete games and then making it DLC that you have to pay for. I mean, it's just terrible. And that's what gamers, I think, are most afraid of. They don't understand, or they don't want to understand, that there's other aspects of NFTs that are beneficial to you as a gamer. So any more stuff that I'm watching though beyond that? No, I'm only thing I've been doing is I've been watching the news with NFT Worlds. I think is interesting. They're trying to pivot. I don't know if they're going to start their own game client. That should be interesting. But yeah, it's kind of like a wait and see period in NFTs for me right now. Let's see. And then this will be the last question. This is, which is the best Bitcoin as an ERC20? And actually, I'll tell you, I don't know that I have an opinion. I generally try to avoid playing with any wrapped Bitcoin, just because Bitcoin, at least for me, is generally a larger investment, and I don't like holding wrapped versions of anything on another chain, at least not for too long, and not in large sums, because you can run into potential issues. So I think if you're going to do that, we can do some research, and we can let you know what we think by the next episode. So it's been a lot of fun, guys, ladies. I would think we're going to wrap it up here. I lost the rest of my teammates. So have a good week and trade safely. If there's anything else, if you guys want to contribute, please reach out to me. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out too. And have a good day. 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 And have a